whatever you want with that.
I like having this on my lap.
Right.
Slide no.
All right.
Sound confirmed.
I think we're good. I think we're live.
Hey.
What camera am I looking to do? Over
Hey, I
here?
think we're
Base
over
on-
there.
Hey!
Nope, wait for it.
Wait. Yep. Nope. He's getting the nods.
Over there?
Teamstream
Yeah!
time.
We got it. Welcome to Massive Chalice Teamstream number 10. Double digits. We've been making this game for a while now.
Yeah.
That's kind of weird. Yeah, so hey, thanks for joining us. And I'm joined by Anthony Vaughn on the Wheels of Steel, producer. How are you doing over here?
Oh, no, not bad. Not bad.
And then over here on Red Couch, we've got lead designer John Burnhelm and also Frederick Storm, our fantastic intern
Such a great name. He didn't even have to change it
from across the
marriage.
narrow sea. He's joining us. Hey, so I think we're just going to jump into this thing. It's been 2 weeks since our last stream, which is kind of standard, and we have a bunch of progress that we'd like to show, and we'll be taking questions as usual. So let's just jump into this. We haven't talked about enemies a lot, or at least in a while. Derek did a ton of amazing concepts for all this stuff. I feel like we really figured out what it meant for the demons to be these weird, like, manifestations of the effects of time. It's kind of like a weird abstract concept, but I feel like we really got there. I'm really happy with the direction. So the overall term that we're using to define the demons, I'm going to try to stop saying demons and start saying the word cadence. So it's this evil force that is invading this realm called the cadence, and we don't have a name for the actual enemies yet themselves. We're talking about
Cadentites.
temporals. I don't know. Some time monsters. Time monsters. But the cadence is the sentient force that's sending these things in and corrupting the realm and trying to like destroy everything. And so we took those designs, took them back into design land, and came up with just like which ones are we actually going to make? What's our baseline for each one? What role does it serve? And we thought we would go through those with you right now. And yes! Okay, so we started actually with this document over here. And this was, you don't have to read this. You just have to look at this.
It was just
It's
trying
just
to
a bunch
put
of
some
stuff.
ideas onto a board and organize them in a way that will be helpful.
And it really started over here with like the time family and then a bunch of abilities that could be inside that time family. So, for example, like petrification would be like a fossilization family ability, or like de-leveling would be like decay or decomposition, like all of these ideas that we had there, and then we kind of like put it into archetypes that you might see in a tactical turn-based game, and then we kind of matched them up with like different abilities, and this was kind of our baseline. So really it was about combining this with the actual art to come up with like kind of like our initial stab at like, hey, these are what we want the enemies to be.
And with our metrics for how many enemies we think we can actually pull off in the time, and what will give us a good playable amount of guys that will make for some fun gameplay. Mm-hmm. So these will definitely change as we create them, produce them, make different AI. But we feel very confident that we could create this group of dudes, and we could make enough missions with these guys that would satisfy the gameplay and would be awesome challenge throughout.
Yep. So we're just gonna blast through this thing. So our first enemy is this bomber, this corrosion dude. I'm a huge fan of enemies that blow themselves up. Suicide bomber type enemies.
Are you a Serious Sam fan?
Yes. Yeah, those dudes are amazing, right?
Yeah, that's pretty. I
love those guys.
Your YOLO XCOM.
Yeah, it does.
Bob-ombs also.
And
excellent.
the blitzers from Iron Brigade, like pretty much any game that I make, you're gonna see enemies that blow themselves up because
we had these guys in Dante's Inferno too. We had these hell guys that could come up to you and blow up, but you could grab them ahead of time and throw them into somebody else and cause chain reactions and stuff.
They're just super, super fun. So like, of course, we're gonna have an enemy that blows himself up, and we thought that the corrosion made a lot of sense. So we want to make sure that they can like detonate themselves, and they're actually being smart. We also to have the whole corrosion stuff to kind of reinforce the corrosion is that we want them to leave behind some tiles that are all corroded and that would like damage players that are standing in them. I think that's about it. I mean, we
it's
want
a cool
this one to be a
design,
lot
too, 'cause
simpler.
He had like the eye gem. So the idea is that he's kind of almost like a bowl of corrosion, like a container, and then his eye gem drops into it, and that's
into his
part of
body, and then you get these awesome
catalyst.
god rays shooting out of it
Yeah.
for
So
one
that
turn,
picture's
and then it
almost
blows
like
up.
Just
Yes.
like pre-detonation.
Yep.
This is
That's
right
pretty
after
cool.
he's
And so,
Dropped the crystal.
so we have tasked Frederick with modeling these. So you modeled these super fast in ZBrush, right? Use ZBrush.
It's like a mock-up model.
And so here's the corrosion
There
guy.
we go. That's from the same view.
Do you want to say anything about this other than it's
No,
sweet?
It's just, I mean, we're trying to get the same faceted look as the drawing had, and it just, yeah, trying to make it look like the drawing as quickly as possible, so we could actually see if it would work in 3D.
And it's cool. Like, I think that this one is really going to work. I think it's going to have a super creepy like walk cycle with like it's just this kind of like creepy weird quadruped thing. And then I
Not a
think
spider.
the red eye gem. Oh, that's right. Oh, I wonder if we should talk about that. This has been a thing that I've seen this come up several places in video games over the
Recently,
last
yeah.
like year. There are some like big video game fans that are totally terrified of spiders, and they like we had a couple of backers say like write to us and be like, please do not make any enemy that looks like a spider, or else they cannot play the game because they're so arachnophobic
Yeah.
that they like have to just like stop playing the game when they get to like a giant spider type enemy. So we're hey, like thanks for backing, and like we're trying not to make a giant spider. Yeah,
But
so
you will face snakes while falling great distances in tight spaces that are surrounded by openness.
in the dark.
Clowns.
Okay, the next one is the time mage. So we've talked about this one a little bit, kind of like our primary mage type enemy for the forgetfulness, and we had a bunch of ideas for the time monsters for the forgetfulness family that we kind of wanted to just pack onto a more like magic user type character. So, very lanky and very like kind of like low HP, sort of like a glass cannon with all these like tricksy sort of things. So the primary attack that we were thinking about was the forgetfulness spell, I guess is for the lack of a better term. And when it hits one of your characters, they'll actually forget how to use one of their skills temporarily. If they get hit with it again during the same battle, they'll permanently forget how to do that special ability. If they get hit with it again, maybe they'll forget their last name. They'll forget that they're actually a hero. They'll forget. I feel like there's a lot of really, really, really bad things that we could do.
All
about,
of their
like,
VO barks, if we do those, should just be like, who am I?
Right on. It's kind of like an interesting like build up type mechanic I think that we can put in there.
It's almost like getting little forgetfulness tokens on the guy, and when you reach 4, maybe he dies, maybe he forgets it because he forgot how to breathe. Maybe maybe he forgets that he's a hero and becomes an enemy.
Forgetting how to breathe is
Yeah.
basically the worst. Yeah.
There was some movie where the guys forgot. They were like, "Oh no, was it? No, it was. God, this is from the early '90s TV show Dinosaurs.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember this?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I believe there was an awesome episode where the television made people so stupid that they started forgetting how to breathe. Yeah. And I remember that it stuck with me.
There's also this messing with line of sight feels very good, like having a cloud that sort of like messes with that thing.
Yeah. Time
Seems
Fist should
like it
be
would
with the
fit.
swapper.
I was thinking that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not sure why that's still there. Oops.
But then this other one that we really liked, which was we call it sleepwalking, just like forcing one of your characters to move a random number of tiles, just kind of in a random direction, just making your characters wander around and kind of breaking up your formations, which is the thing. We don't have renders of this guy because he's already in the game. You'll see him in the game.
You've seen him before. He's been
Yep.
our stand-in.
Yep, but he's gonna have really be sort of the grab bag for all of the spell type things that we consider to be like forgetfulness powers.
Because we already have him in the game and animated, we're going to use him as our test for a ranged enemy. So he's going to be the first guy like lobbing ranged bolts at you, but he probably won't do that in the final game.
So our next enemy, one of the harder enemies in the game, we're calling it the Swapper. So this is another one in the forgetfulness family. So he's like a big, kind of brutish melee enemy that just hits really hard for the most part. Also, probably putting the time fist onto this guy. Maybe that club should be more fist-like, so it can be a time fist, so he can time fist your guys. But really, what we want to do is have him swap places with one of your characters. That will be kind of his like primary method of breaking up your formations, messing with that stuff, and also getting into melee range. So swapping position, you know, maybe your caberjack will be right next to him, but he'll swap positions with your arbalist that's in the back, and now your arbalist is like totally exposed and you know, in the middle of a bunch of other enemies. And your caberjack will have to either, you know, move forward into the other enemies or come back to fight this guy. I think that's a really good ability for this dude.
And we'll give you ways to lock him down, but you're going to have to kind of use that tactically. So are you going to get a guy near him to use a special ability that's going to lock him down so he can't swap, or are you going to avoid doing that, just hope that he doesn't break your formation too much?
And this dude turned out amazing.
It is so bad.
This dude turned out amazing. Like, I am so happy with this, mainly because there are no effects. I think that this whole, what were we calling it? Like the Luxor Hotel, the Luxor Hotel beam coming out of his neck. I think it's going to read really well in the three-quarter perspective. So you just imagine seeing the character from a top-down perspective like this and having this huge light beam that blasts out of his head. Make him very obvious, really draw attention to him. Like, I think we can really focus on, you know, just making him, you know, sort of feel mini-boss-ish and be one of the harder enemies. I think it's going to be great.
And then these models, too, are not final. No. A lot of it is for how will this character's shape work for rigging and also how it will look in the game. And so it's really a great first pass, but also it's you know, taking a lot of, you know, Derek's art and turning it into a model. So, like, what has that process been like?
Because, I mean, the sketches that Derek did is, like, super rough and quick because he had to do a bunch. And so it's actually, like, continuing the design process and finding out what it'll actually look like in 3D and then adjusting it as you guys see it and adding more details or removing details or stuff like that. So I guess the fist, adding a fist to that.
Yeah, I think we should make it more. I think we should make it more fist-like.
I'm up for that.
Or you know, one thing in the image, it seems like it's a lot flatter and stumpier. That was just one thing that I
feel like that's
now
because
looking at it.
Squashed into the ground. Like maybe that's even on the rig. Like maybe it is this kind of bulbous thing, but that when he moves, we put an extra joint there so it kind of can squash. Yeah, I don't know. That's cool, and that's interesting. Is that this is not. You didn't just get a you know, a turnaround.
No. This is like
you were having to do a whole lot of artistic and design decisions in making these things.
It's but it's super cool as well.
And
it makes it more fun to model.
Yeah. And that's also, I mean, we really rely on the people who are modeling stuff. Like, we don't have a ton of time to do like orthos and, you know, do all the turnaround shots of the guy. That would be probably a more standard process that you would see at a game company where. So
I was looking through my The Last of Us art book and just seeing. I mean, it's for their main characters, even their non-main characters do this, but like the hundreds of variations that they draw concept-wise before they start modeling any of that stuff. It's a luxury.
Yeah. We have to be a little bit more indie than
Derek is busy.
Than that. Yeah. Okay, so the next one. This is the spore enemy. So this is in the growth family.
And this was just, we actually had a previous drawing from Derek where I just literally took it into Photoshop and lopped some shit off of it to make it more about the size and thing we were looking at. This was, so this was just like, we had an idea what it would be like, but Derek hasn't had time to go back and actually do a concept of it. So, and this happens too.
And so this enemy would be a very small melee enemy, probably the first one that you encounter in the game. And eventually, it will be able to, when there are multiple of them together, they can combine and form the next enemy that we'll look at in a second. But with this one, you know, we were like, does it float? Like, what is it doing? What's happening? So this one, Frederick really required the most kind of like, oh, and the other big thing is that I really didn't want it to float. It looked like it could be floating.
Yeah, actually, people kept talking about, oh, it's supposed to float, and I didn't actually realize that they were looking at that little concept thing that I did, because that was supposed to be placeholder for whatever we actually did, but we never did anything new with it.
And so,
I get it now.
And so Frederick, you just made this like weird.
Awesome. I just talked to Andy and Derek and like kind of agreed on a few things. And
it's cool, and so it's basically it's like a snake with a hand on the end of it, and it's got the big the onyx the real hard onyx head.
The Barlow
Yeah, it was
ball.
important that it
Barlow
wasn't-
balls.
That wasn't even completely round. That was important.
Yeah.
It was more like a gym.
Yeah, it's cool. So the other thing is that we didn't want it to float, and it has to be tall enough so that the regular attacks from all of your characters will actually work against it. So having this very like Cobra looking kind of thing, like we're just gonna rig this thing up and try to get it in the game and see how it looks, see how it plays. I don't know, and that's basically to have a small enemy that's kind of swarmy, and you have a bunch of them. They'll be weak to AOE attacks, and
But if you let them live too long, then they might come together and Voltron up.
and form one of these guys. So we're just calling this one the spawner. So
And these are growth demons. The idea
these
is
are also
that,
growth demons. Yes.
letting them be unchecked, you're going to have a big population of them on your hands.
So
Growth.
several of these spore guys would be able to get together and form one of these spawners. But then also the core attack of the spawner would be to fire one of these spores. So it would spit one of those smaller melee enemies out as a projectile, hit a character, and then it would land in a neighboring square and become an enemy. And then multiple of those spores would form spawners, which would spit more spores, and
then you crash your computer.
Well, we'll see how ridiculous it is. I mean, it's an interesting thing, but if the spores go down in one hit, hopefully it provides some really interesting tactical stuff. We also wanted to incorporate some regeneration on this guy. Either he would be able to eat the spores to heal himself, or just like do sort of like a one. I really like those abilities that have like a couple turn build up before they go off. So if it sort of goes into a like regenerating stance, and then if you have one turn to kill him, and if you don't, he's gonna get all his HP back, and it's kind of beefy. I don't know. It's kind of awesome. Oh, and the other idea we had for growth was mutation.
Yeah.
Having a sort of blast that could scramble the traits, scramble the genetics of a hero, or put some just like bad traits on your hero that would then be taken through the ages. It would be passed down to the children of that hero if they have kids. Oh, I also saw a really good
cell phone of demons.
I haven't gone through this whole thread, but Blood Bridal, one of our backers that posts a ton in the forums, he posted this huge post that I need to like go through and break down of all these like ideas for enemy abilities, and it's super rad. And one that he had for the for growth was like a negative trait that is like a carrier trait, and when you die, you actually produce spores.
Okay.
So, and then that would be a genetic thing that you pass down to your kids. So if you ever die on the battlefield, you spit out a couple of spores that can then form a thing. And I think that's like a really weird, interesting kind of thing, is that if you become infected, that would actually stay with you and get passed down to your children, giving you more of those choices of just who you're going to retire. So this one I think, again, had a lot of that kind of, there was some artistic interpretation needed on this one, because it was like, it's, looking back at the image, it's kind of weird, it's like what is going on there exactly? There's a lot of arms. So for this one, I'm really happy with the way that it turned out, where it's like all of these, it's a lot of these weird arms that are not as dense, I think, as on the original image, but they're all kind of like holding the weird Barlow ball up, which is the thing that really like, we want that to be like one of the core sort of visual elements of the growth demons. Oh no, I just pulled my mouse out of there. Sorry, we're having technical problems. It's cool though. We're okay. Okay, Frederick, do you want to say anything about this guy?
Yeah, I guess Andy really liked this one, and it was the one I had to do the fastest. So I think sometimes doing it faster can be good. And then also, I think we need to change the kind of dress he's wearing a little bit.
Yes. This
one of the
sort of
revisions.
brown area here is that, it's like I didn't see it at first, but I think Andy referred to it as the Baywatch, the Baywatch swimsuit that he's wearing.
Yeah.
So we're gonna, because now that I've said it, it's too bad that I've said it, because once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Jeff just said more codpiece.
More codpiece. Yeah, if we could just embiggen the codpiece, really.
Yeah, I say
that would
bring
be
it
amazing.
further.
It's so good. Yeah. Okay. Sweet.
So that's again like redesigning it a little bit in 3D.
Yeah, and I really like it. It's super creepy with all the arms. The multiple limb thing really reads as the growth stuff. It's super cool.
And also, I don't know how, because you're doing these, like are you creating these can you create these things entirely in ZBrush?
Yeah.
Or, yeah. Okay,
This
that's
is like
amazing.
purely ZBrush, right?
Okay, so that's
this
awesome.
is like juk juk juk,
And
chugging it out.
the coloring that you're doing here too,
Yeah, that's
with
the-
lighting, like really just shows. It's almost like a concept piece in and of itself. In that, like, okay, cool, creepy backlighting, that kind of, going from the green to the kind of pink or red down there looks really, really cool. I think.
Yeah. But these renders are from Maya because I
Okay.
crank them out in ZBrush and then I take them to Maya to put on the textures and do quick, like
What's your
real-time renders.
favorite modeling tool, and why?
It's it's ZBrush because I don't have to think about polygons. It's flow.
Nice.
So yeah, it's definitely ZBrush.
Okay, the next one that we have, we're calling this the Time Killer.
In reference to the awesome arcade game.
The awesome arcade game Time Killers.
It may change.
So this guy is of the decay and fossilization family. So it's this, with the exposed bone and like having this huge kind of scythe weapon. And we really want to have this be like kind of a fast melee character that runs up, and then every time he attacks you, he's actually aging the characters that he hits. This is something that we're going to have to balance. It's kind of weird and interesting. Again, trying to put a lot of these effects that you'll experience during the tactical layer that will cross over into the strategic layer. So if somebody gets hit too much, some guy that you're planning on retiring once he hits 50, but then he goes into this battle when he's 30, he gets hit way too many times, then he comes out and he's 60, and you're like, oh man, what do I do?
Or he could even die. Like
he can even die.
Every character is kind of going to have a predetermined, death date, and if they cross that line, your 75-year-old that's
Dude.
planning to, he's going to die at 76.
Time
One
killers.
hit from the time killer, and he's gone.
So we want it to
Maybe.
be like pretty simple, where that's I really like enemies that have very single purpose, so that they're predictable. You know what's going to happen.
You even could, you could use him to help get your young guys to prime. They're not going to get a bunch of
Yes.
experience, but that could be something you could actually you could do, which is kind of interesting.
So here's this guy. And I really like the kind of creepy exposed bones and like the big weird kind of scythe hook weapon. I think that this guy's going to animate really well in the game as well. Very creepy and kind of running around and slashing at dudes. I think we could even do
I think we're going to need to do something about the face.
Yeah.
Like, I think he might be cooler without.
It's a little too cartoony, maybe.
It does, and it does kind of look a little, looks a little Grim Fandango, maybe.
I'll say he looks pretty happy. He's like, hey,
And he's kind of stoked. Yeah, maybe we
It's a
should
reference.
just embiggen that. We should just make it even bigger.
that would actually be awesome.
But yeah, we could even. I feel like we could try jointing up the actual scythe and do some cool, like stretchy, like cleavy kind of attacks where he's hitting multiple squares in front of him with it.
Yeah, and we should talk about this too, because we were talking about also like making it a bit more like a praying mantis attack, and then having it. So having worked on a big game, Dante's Inferno, that had all scythe attacks, our scythe could swivel and stretch, and it made that one weapon do. We did some attacks for the DLC where St. Lucia put the scythe blade on her foot and then did like a flash kick with it, and it worked in that context. So you can make a scythe do some crazy stuff, but you gotta build it in. So let's figure that out.
And then the last
And he doesn't
one.
have his skin cape yet. So the idea is that these guys kind of have a green outer layer and shell, and then inside is kind of the decaying, part. And so one of the coolest things from Derek's original drawing was that you'd have this kind of like flap of skin from the green part that's still kind of hanging. So we'll build that into this game.
Yeah, it's in the animation model. It's just not
Yeah.
in this one,
Yep.
unfortunately.
Sweet.
Because it'll be done with our
With the
sim.
simulation.
Yeah.
Cool.
This guy's awesome.
And then the final one, this is the Bone Shell Artillery character. We didn't, we really had to search for range attacks, for ways that these enemies could do range attacks, because a lot of them were coming out at very primal, like very melee focused, I think, a lot of them, because they are like more, monstrous. And yeah, so with this one, we were like, oh, cool, could we take those I mean, they actually look like melee weapons, but what if they were actually kind of like scorpion bone flingers? These like flinging bone fragments at characters. So that's cool. Like we're like, yeah, we can totally turn this guy into a ranged attacker. That's awesome. And then we had some discussions about like interesting abilities. I think it came out of the like regeneration idea. We're just talking about how in tactical games, a lot of times you will like alpha strike stuff. You'll be like, okay, I'm gonna have 3 or 4 of my guys all attack this one enemy and kill him this turn, so that like he won't get, he will be dead. He won't have an attack. Cool. There's no reason to spread the damage around because all the enemies are still alive. They each get a turn. They each get an attack. So it's better to sort of like focus your fire and like kill enemies one at a time. So we're like, sweet. Like, what can we do that would actually go against that? So the idea here is that if you attack this enemy, it will kind of get a bone shield for the rest of the turn. Where its defense will go super high, or it will force all the attacks to be glancing blows or whatever. It will basically take almost no damage from attacks that it gets for the rest of the turn. And then when it comes to the enemy's turn, that shell will bust off and it'll run around normally and whatever. So it's just basically you want to hit it once really hard and then ignore it for the rest of the turn. And I think that's going to be a really cool like tactical thing that people will have to learn to do, because I think your natural tendency is to like do those alpha strikes, and this is an enemy that will really punish you for doing those alpha strikes. And
Would you say punishment is a big part of your design, Brian?
punishment, yes.
Yeah.
I like punishing you as much as possible.
I can get behind that.
All the time.
Oh, that's awesome.
So this was really weird because Derek chopped this one up several times. Like, I'm really happy with the way that this one has turned out.
There are many different interpretations.
But there were lots of interpretations of this thing. So when I saw it, I was like, oh, this one it's facing to the left.
Yeah.
It's facing to the left. The weird stump things are kind of like its weird head, and then those things are coming out of its back. But the original one that you made of this was very similar to the Time Killer guy, where if you imagine they're both facing the camera, they're both like straight on. So, and I thought that they look too similar, where they have the dual arm on one side, asymmetric kind of look to it. So I really wanted them to be. I really wanted it to be the way I saw it, not the way you saw it, basically.
We even had like a third interpretation where it was all
there
three
was
of
a
the
third
spikes.
interpretation, right?
This is the way I saw it was different than the way you saw it.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's just one of those things where the design is so weird and asymmetric and quirky that there's so many different ways to interpret that thing.
This is why you do turnarounds if you have time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why you do orthos, because it takes any of that like ambiguity and it sucks it out. But yeah, I think this guy's going to be very cool. He has a very different look than the Time Killer, even though they're in the same family. He's like a very dedicated ranged attacker. It's awesome. I think it's going to be sweet. Super cool. And
That's
then
a cool image.
This is all of them together.
As a creepy family.
Although the Time Mage is not in here.
Yeah.
But that's fine.
Yeah, he's in the game already.
So those are the 7 core enemies that we're going to go with for the game. I'm sure that there will be lots of cool opportunistic things that we adjust as we like go through. The abilities will probably end up being different. The spore guy will probably end up being completely different than how he looks. The big swapper brute guy, like, will he even fit in a 2x2 square? Like, we want him to be pushing the edges of that. Like, so yeah, this is great that we get to we get to use this to talk about like how big they should be, how they should animate, all these things. We can get them in the game and then start prototyping their abilities up and seeing how it fits.
And I was super impressed at how quickly you hammer these guys out, because it was so fast that he even did one of the demons concepts that we're not even talking about doing.
Yeah, that's right. There's a bonus one.
And I'm like, oh, okay, cool, awesome. So I mean, it's it's interesting. This is almost like 3D concept art, because you're seeing how these shapes might work in real space, but it also allows us to then rig them, do some test animations, get them in the game, and make sure they're going to work, so we don't spend forever on a concept art and then it not work in the game.
Yeah. It's pretty messy, but it works for testing it out.
That's cool. And also color. I mean, you got like a lot of cool color and texture tests in here too. You definitely can tell which family each guy's from. So that's super sweet.
Yeah, excellent.
Cool. So does anybody have any questions for Frederic? His name's Frederick. I added the flourish, as I do. A lot of people saying MC Statler says those guys are wild looking. Love the guy on the left. Bone Shield guy?
Yeah, this guy.
So CompuFreak99 asks, so other than the light shaft on the swapper, are there any other visual effects you're thinking of that are not yet represented?
I think that the gem. You know what? This is actually the post-drop
So that's like after
version
the gem
of
has
it.
dropped.
But all the corrosion guys. I guess we only ended up with one corrosion guy, but
And we have one extra now.
that's right. We have an
you
extra
can
one,
always
but
just use him.
all the corrosion guys have this weird kind of polygonal red gem that will be glowing, and then we really want, like, when he drops the gem in his body and gets ready to explode, really want to have those cool god rays that are shooting out of him.
Yep.
It's safe to say that we do a strong effects pass on all of
all,
our
yeah,
SATs,
yeah.
like as much as we possibly
I
can.
think that
so.
the only ones I think that the growth guys don't really have a strong kind of effects thing. I mean, other than, like, I really want that onyx, their onyx heads to be very readable and weird and shiny and stuff. But there's probably going to be some sort of, like, weird flies or something around them. I don't know. We'll see. And then the actual, like, the fossilization guys, like, I don't think they have, like, dedicated effects that are sort of concepted out right now. But I think that all of them we're gonna make sure they have some.
I kind of see the white part of the inside as kind of like decaying mummies, and so maybe even some dust and bits that kind of falling off from that all the time. Not quite to like the pigpen level of Cloud, but
Sure.
Like in the standard Indiana Jones. Oh, we found a mummy and it's just kind of covered in dust and there's dust flying everywhere. That kind of thing, kind of coming from these guys.
Mummy dust.
So, mummy dust. I'm
Also,
like,
we
hey
have
man, you got any more mummy dust for Daddy? Daddy needs his mummy dust. All right. So Yo Voxen asks, Frederick, how long does it take for you to simulate the flat planes? And I don't think you're really simulating them, but like, how are you achieving that look?
Well, there's like two different steps of going about that. I mean, first there's like just sculpting it where there's certain brushes in ZBrush that will kind of like just make really flat plane areas. And then we're going for the very faceted look. So after I've kind of like sculpted out and kind of like hinted where I want these things, I do this thing called dissemination, where ZBrush just calculate the lowest possible mesh. And it becomes totally triangular and faceted as we want it. So
Sweet.
for concepting, it's pretty smart. Once we get to the final models, we'll probably have to model it like with actual topology.
That's awesome. So a follow-up question to that from ChatRat12. What's your favorite ZBrush brush?
Oh, that's a couple. I love Trim Dynamic,
Trim Dynamic?
Inflate, and Clay Buildup, and Dam Standard.
You know what, ironically, you just listed my exact favorite ones.
No,
so that's amazing.
Really into those brushes.
We should get a beer later, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last question that we got is from Kalimian and Mooney Jello. Are there 7 enemies? Are we always seeing 7 enemies or 7 archetypes of enemies? So maybe Brad, you could elaborate on that.
I mean, I think that these are going to be the like 7. Wait, 7 what?
It's like archetypes,
enemies?
or are these like the 7? Like, are these the guys?
I mean, I think that
We just
these
were talking
are
about that earlier
the
today.
guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we limited budget. We gotta keep it keep it reasonable.
We may be
Yeah,
able to
and-
do a variant or two.
Yeah,
on some of them.
I hope that as we go, we'll be able to do sort of like palette swaps for more powerful versions of them, or
Even like we're talking like having the spore earlier on in the game that can't actually turn into the spawner yet, and then having the version of the spore that can turn into the spawner, so we can use that guy earlier without having to introduce a more advanced enemy. in the
Also,
beginning
our
of the game.
accessory system is pretty sweet. So if we do have, like, say there's a higher level version of the Time Killer, having like a head variant or a side variant for him on top of doing some material work. Jeff is super badass when it comes to like just making up sweet accessories for making dudes
He
look
loves our
tougher.
accessory system.
Like, I hope that we'd be able to do that, but we'll see. It's also about how many we need,
Yep.
as we go through and start being able to play the game. Where should these guys fit in the difficulty curve, and how, I always do like it when enemies return. Stronger versions of the enemies that have slightly different abilities show up later in the game, and yeah, I don't know. Well, a lot of it is going to be, explorative as we go.
And
Is that a word? Explorative?
Sure. You know what? It is right now. I'll say that.
Okay, sweet.
And then one last question from Joey Betts, our friend Joey.
Joey Betts.
How long before we can see these animated and/or in game?
That's up to Jeff.
That's up to Jeff.
We already
One
have
of them
the
is
time
already-
killer's already in game. We'll see.
Time
him
killer's
later.
already in the game. Yeah.
Yep.
It looks a little different though.
Yeah, he's an older version.
And Solar Blitz asks, will we
No.
see plaid palette swaps?
Plaid palette swaps. I think that you. Yeah. I think that.
They all have plaid.
I think this guy should be wearing a plaid shirt.
I haven't scoped this out in the budget in the schedule, but I think we should talk. I think that could be pretty awesome.
Nice.
Cool.
Really, like, I think that as we have time, Jeff will just rig them up and get placeholder animations on them, and then we'll be able to see how they look in the game. Real soon, next month or two, I would say.
Yeah. Pretty awesome.
Sweet.
Pretty awesome.
Okay. We're gonna go away from this.
I'm gonna go.
Frederick,
get Dan.
thank you. Can you grab Dan?
Thanks for joining us, Frederick.
And we're gonna. What do you think about this?
Hey, Brett.
Yeah.
I noticed that's quite a good color on you.
What do you think of this fetching shirt?
You know what? It's
What do you
not too
think?
bright. It's kind of nice and burnt,
Yeah?
if you will.
What if it all of a sudden? Is this gonna work? This is gonna work. This is my idea.
What are you doing right now,
I
Brad?
don't know.
What
Is
in
it
the-
happening? What if this all of a sudden became a massive chalice shirt? Which way? Closer?
What?
Closer to the camera?
I
Oh, this is. Oh!
Back.
Oh! Maybe?
What is
Is that it?
happening?
Oh, yeah! Okay, sweet. So, hey, this is going to be our backer shirt. That's awesome. This is exactly what it's going to look like. Except you won't have a sweet microphone on your shirt. But
What?
we're working on getting these actually put out to everybody.
That's
Look at that. I
awesome.
can actually make the logo smaller, or I can make the logo bigger. That's pretty awesome.
Brad,
But,
did you work on your pecs too? That's
yeah, you know.
And then I
That's the
think
second time I've heard that this week.
Do you even lift?
Do
Do you even lift, Dan? Hey,
Wasn't Paul asking you?
I think with that we might take a little break.
yes, I think that we're gonna take a break and
We'll
we'll
be
bring
back in
Dan.
just-
We'll bring
in just a
Dan
minute.
in here and we'll start. We're gonna show off the build.
Awesome.
Sweet. Stay tuned.
See you soon in a second.